Sabeel and is here today from Washington, D.C. He also practices in Jerusalem.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the expressions you hear a lot in Israel is Babble Hammock, Milhama. During a war, you act as if you're in a war. And the idea behind it is that Israel is at war. During war, all restraint is abandoned. You use your power to achieve your goals. You destroy, you don't think too much about what you're doing other than achieving your specific goals. The rules are out of the window. And that's a very scary thought when the Israeli army has so much power at its disposal. The reality, however, is that there are rules and laws that are applicable during wars. And the rules and the laws are very clear and very specific. Unlike a word like terrorism, which you can define any way you wish, the laws of war are very specific and very clear. You are not allowed to target civilian infrastructure, period. So when you talk about cutting off electricity and gas from Gaza, or their water supplies, or their economic infrastructure, as Israel clearly says they are doing, that is a war crime. There are certain weapons like dime, which are horrendous weapons, where the shrapnel melts inside your body after it does the damage. That is illegal. That is a war crime. There are principles like proportionality, which says that even if you're going after a military target, the amount of force that you can use has to be proportional to that end. It is not enough to say, I am making it more difficult for the enemy, so I will destroy a whole row of houses so that they will have to dig 100 meters more the next time when they build a tunnel. That is not allowed. There are laws and there are courts. War crimes have universal jurisdiction, which means any country can bring an action. War crimes also have no statute of limitations, which means you can do it 10, 15, 20 years in the future. And there is now an international criminal court. By the Treaty of Rome, this court was established. It sits, it has a repertoire, it has a secretariat, there is a procedure for investigating, bringing actions, and trying people. Now, Israel is very afraid of this court. In fact, they are working very hard to avoid being brought before that court. Not only have they refused to sign the Treaty of Rome, as has the United States and about 4 other countries, they've also pressured the Palestinians for a long time not to accede to that treaty. And since that court has complementary jurisdiction, which means they only operate if there's no other court that brings in action, they're going to go through the charade of setting up their own tribunal, we just heard 2 days ago. to investigate Israeli actions during the recent fight, and specifically to investigate proportionality. This way, an Israeli judge, neutral former high court judge, is going to issue a report which Dershowitz and the New York Times will declare to be such a wonderful investigation and an independent investigation, and therefore no jurisdiction. Israel will try its best to avoid a proper hearing in front of the ICC, and that is part of the battle that we need to fight now. To make sure Israel does not enjoy immunity or impunity for its actions during this Gaza affair. The second battle that Israel needs to fight is not in court, but in the public domain. And one of the best ways it does that is by demonizing Hamas. Now, I am not a member of Hamas. I'm not an apologist for Hamas. I don't like their ideology or their tactics. I want to put that up front. However, I am very aware of how Israel successfully demonizes Hamas, and that exonerates it for everything that it does. They did the same thing with the PLO for many, many years, until they finally domesticated it to some degree. We must be aware of this as a tactic. It does not matter whether you like Hamas or not, or what they say in their charter. This war was not a war against Hamas. In fact, Israeli analysts were very clear. They did not want Hamas to collapse. They wanted it to stay in power. This was a war against Gaza and against the Palestinian people there. And every time you hear that this was a war between Israel and Hamas is a terrorist organization which is meant on the destruction of Israel, and that it is Islamic militants, they're like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and everybody else, and demonize it totally. We cannot talk to them, we cannot trust them. How do you... It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant, and we must be aware of this tactic that is being played. It's very important. Very few people are talking about it. And of course, Hamas doesn't help things any. Doesn't have any proper spokespeople in this country to defend them. And I'm not, as I said, their spokesperson. Two good things that I want to say that are very, very important before I end. The first is we must be aware that even though at the top Israel continues to exercise great power over media centers and over large organizations and even governments, they are losing at the bottom. They can control CNN and the New York Times. They cannot control Facebook and Twitter. The second, and with this I end since I see my time is up, is I want to say how important it is that there are brave, courageous Jewish voices who are taking positions of integrity as Jews opposed to these war crimes. I think that's the best thing that can be done to prevent anti-Semitism from taking advantage of what's happening. Thank you.